If you stared at the siding of my house long enough, you'd start to feel your soul leaving your body. It was a color the builder called sand dune, but any rational human being would call despair beige. It was the same color as the sidewalk, the same color as the mailboxes, the same color as the mood of everyone living in Whispering Pines. I stood on my front porch, a mug of lukewarm coffee in my hand, sweating through my t-shirt. It was early July in Virginia, the kind of humidity that feels like you're breathing through a wet wool blanket. But the heat wasn't what was raising my blood pressure. It was the red laser dot dancing on my porch column. I watched it flick from the flower pot to the railing, then up to the bracket I'd installed 2 days ago. I followed the source of the laser across the manicured, weed-free lawn, over the curb, and onto the sidewalk. Brenda was standing there. Brenda, the president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. Brenda, the Samyun, woman who once measured the grass height of the community park with a ruler because she suspected the landscaping crew was cheating us by 1/8 of an inch. She was wearing her combat uniform, a tan cardigan, despite the 90-degree heat, khaki capris, and sensible walking shoes that looked like they were designed to crush joy. She held a digital laser tape measure in one hand and a clipboard in the other. She looked like a sniper scouting a position, if the sniper was a 60-year-old retiree with a vendetta against personal expression. "Morning, Brenda," I called out. I tried to keep my voice level, the casual greeting of a neighbor who wasn't currently fantasizing about digging a moat. "Target practice?" She didn't smile. Brenda didn't do smiles. She did grimaces of varying intensity. She lowered the laser and scribbled something furiously on her clipboard. "Distance from the primary load-bearing decorative column to the curb is 12 feet, 4 inches, she muttered. Not to me, but to the atmosphere. She adjusted her rimless glasses and looked up, her eyes narrowing behind the lenses. "Jack, we have a problem." I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like battery acid. "Do we? I thought it was a nice Tuesday. Birds are singing. The beige is beiging." She marched up the driveway. She had a walk that was distinctive, heels striking the pavement hard, a rhythmic clack, clack, clack that usually signaled an impending fine. She stopped exactly at the property line, respecting the boundaries only because it was legally prudent to do so. Bylaw 44.2, Section C, she recited from memory. She didn't even need to look at the thick binder she carried under her arm. Regarding curbside distractions, protrusions, and non-standard ornamentation, you are in direct violation. I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "Brenda, please tell me you aren't talking about the flag." I pointed to the 3x5 American flag hanging limply from the wooden pole I'd mounted on the porch column. It wasn't a massive dealership flag. It wasn't tattered. It was a standard hardware store stars and stripes. I'd put it up for the 4th of July weekend, which was 5 days away. "It is a non-approved aesthetic disruption," she said, her voice clipped and nasally. "The Whispering Pines Community Covenant, which you signed, Jack, clearly states that all exterior decor must maintain a neutral earth tone palette to ensure property value cohesion. We have a very specific visual harmony here." "Visual harmony?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Brenda, it's the American flag. We live in America. This is Virginia. George Washington lived like 20 miles from here. I'm pretty sure he didn't fight the redcoats, so we could argue about earth tones." "This isn't about history, Jack. It's about the bylaws," she snapped. She tapped the laser measure against her palm. "Red, white, cuts, and blue are aggressive colors. They clash with the tone subdivision's architectural intent. The red, specifically. It's loud. Loud. It's fabric, Brenda. It doesn't make noise. You know what's loud? Mr. Henderson's leaf blower at 7 o'clock a.m. on a Sunday. But I don't see you out there lasering his decibels. Mr. Henderson uses an HOA-approved electric low-noise blower, and he has a medical exemption for his insomnia, which requires him to keep a schedule. She fired back instantly. She always had an answer. It was like arguing with a Wikipedia page written by a fascist. Furthermore, the bracket you drilled into the column constitutes a structural modification without prior Architectural Review Committee approval. Form Arc 7 was not filed. I used 2 screws, Brenda. It took me 30 seconds. Unauthorized structural modification, she repeated, checking a box on her form with a vicious slash of her pen. You have 24 hours to remove the item and fill the holes with color-matched wood putty. Failure to comply will result in a Tier 1 violation fine, $50 for the first day, doubling every subsequent day of non-compliance. She ripped the top sheet off her clipboard. The sound of the paper tearing was the loudest thing in the neighborhood. She walked up the steps, invading my territory now, and slapped the pink slip against my chest. "Have a blessed day, Jack," she said. She turned on her heel and marched away, heading toward the Hendersons' house, likely to measure the distance between their marigolds. I stood there for a long time, holding the pink slip. I looked up at the flag. It hung there, innocent and patriotic, unaware that it was apparently an act of domestic terrorism against the visual harmony of Whispering Pines. I didn't take it down. I went inside and threw the citation on the kitchen counter. My wife, Sarah, was sitting at the island, scrolling through her phone and eating yogurt. She looked up, saw the pink paper, and sighed. "Brenda?" she asked. "Brenda," I confirmed, grabbing a fresh cup of coffee. "Apparently, Old Glory is an aggressive color violation." Sarah picked up the slip. $50? Jack, just take it down. It's not worth it. It's the 4th of July, Sarah. Everyone has flags up. Go 2 streets over to Oakwood. It looks like a parade route. Why do we have to live in the one neighborhood run by a beige dictator? Because this neighborhood has good schools for when we have kids, and the property values have gone up 20%, she said, reciting the logic we used when we bought the place 3 years ago. "Just take it down. We're saving for Cabo, remember? I don't want to give Brenda our margarita money." "I'm appealing it," I said, opening my laptop. "I'm not paying $50. There's a federal law, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. I heard about it on the radio. They can't stop me." Sarah rolled her eyes, but she didn't stop me. "Fine. Fight the power. But if the fine goes over 100, I'm taking it out of your golf budget." I spent the next hour crafting my appeal. I logged into the Whispering Pines resident portal, a website that looked like it was built in 1998, and found the dispute resolution form. I typed out a passionate defense. I cited the federal act. I talked about liberty. I talked about how the flag bracket was easily removable and caused no permanent damage. I felt like Thomas Jefferson, if Jefferson was typing on a MacBook in his boxer shorts. I hit submit. 2 days passed. I left the flag up. Every time I drove into the driveway, I felt a surge of pride. I was holding the line. On Thursday evening, I got the email notification. Subject: Decision regarding Appeal 44492, 124 Oak Street. I clicked it open, feeling confident. Dear resident, the Architectural Review Committee has reviewed your appeal regarding the unauthorized facade alteration and non-compliant textile display. The appeal is denied. My jaw dropped. I read on. Reasoning. The Federal Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005 allows homeowners associations to place reasonable restrictions on the time, place, and manner of displays to protect the substantial interest of the association. Whispering Pines deems the placement, front porch column, and size/color intensity to be unreasonable due to its clash with the established community aesthetic. Furthermore, the unapproved drilling into the column violates structural integrity guidelines. Current fine balance, $150. Initial fine plus 2 days of non-compliance. They denied the appeal, and they charged me for the days I waited for the answer. I slammed the laptop shut. They can't do that. They just did, Sarah said from the living room. She sounded tired. Jack, please, it's $150. That's a nice dinner. That's half a plane ticket. Just take it down. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the siding off the house, but I knew she was right. If I kept it up, the fines would double. $300, $600, $1,200 to $200. In a week, I'd owe them a car. In a month, they'd put a lien on the house. Brenda knew this. She banked on the fact that normal people have budgets, and she had infinite time. I walked outside. The sun was setting, casting long, depressing shadows over the beige world. Brenda was across the street, watering her hydrangeas. She wasn't looking at me, which made it worse. She knew. She knew I had gotten the email. She was waiting for the walk of shame. I grabbed the screwdriver. It took me 3 minutes. I unscrewed the bracket. I filled the tiny holes with putty. I folded the flag, treating it with the reverence it deserved, feeling like I was burying a friend. When I looked up, Brenda was watching. She gave me a single, curt nod. A victory nod. Good boy, the nod said. Get back in line. I went back inside, feeling hollow. I felt emasculated. I'm a grown man, a project manager for a construction supply firm, and I had just been bullied by a woman whose hobby is measuring grass. I took it down, I told Sarah. I'm sorry, honey, she said, giving my shoulder a squeeze. I know it meant a lot to you, but we can put a flag up inside or maybe a sticker on the car. It's not the same, I grumbled. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, a cheap domestic lager, and went out to the back patio. The backyard was private, at least, fenced in with the mandatory 6-foot white vinyl privacy fence. I sat in my lawn chair and stared up at the back of the house. I was stewing. My brain was looping through arguments I should have made, things I should have said. Reasonable restrictions. That was the phrase they used. Reasonable restrictions on time, place, and manner. I took a long pull of the beer. I stared at the roof. The roof was old, not leaking, but old. The inspector had told us when we bought the place that the asphalt shingles had about 3 to 5 years of life left. They were dull, speckled gray. Weathered granite, I think the brochure called it. I pulled my phone out. I wasn't done. I wanted to know exactly how they had beaten me. I downloaded the full PDF of the Whispering Pines Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions, CC&Rs. It was a 200-page document of pure misery. I scrolled to Article 4, Exterior Maintenance. Section 4.1, Siding. Siding must be kept clean and free of mildew. Colors must be chosen from the approved palette. See Appendix A. I looked at Appendix A. It was 50 shades of beige, tan, cream, and sad gray. I scrolled to Section 4.3, Doors and Shutters. Same thing. Approved colors only. Maroon was allowed for shutters, but only colonial heritage maroon, not fire engine red. I scrolled to Section 4.5, Yard ornaments, banned. No gnomes, no flamingos, no flags, except on specific holidays, and subject to reasonable restrictions. Then I hit Article 8, Roofing. I read it. Then I blinked and read it again. Section 8.1. Roofing materials. All residences must utilize high-quality architectural asphalt shingles, slate, or synthetic slate tiles. Metal roofing is prohibited. Wooden shakes are prohibited due to fire code. Section 8.2. Maintenance. Roofs must be kept in good repair, free of loose shingles, moss, or algae growth. I scrolled down. I waited for the part about color. I waited for the approved palette reference. It wasn't there. I scrolled back up to the table of contents. Maybe it was in an addendum? I checked the 2008 addendum regarding solar panels. I checked the 2012 revision regarding satellite dishes. Nothing. There was a massive glaring hole in the bylaws. Likely when the bylaws were written in the late 90s, asphalt shingles only came in gray, black, and brown. They didn't think they needed to specify color because technology hadn't made colored shingles a standard option yet. They regulated the material, asphalt, but forgot to regulate the aesthetic. I sat up, straight. The plastic lawn chair creaked under me. "Sarah!" I yelled. "What?" she called from inside. "Did you find a spider?" "I found a loophole." She came to the sliding glass door, looking skeptical. "Jack, stop. Don't go down the rabbit hole." "Come here," I waved her over. I pointed at the phone screen. "Read this, Section 8.1. She squinted at the small text. "Roofing materials, asphalt shingles, slate. Okay. What about it?" "It doesn't say what color they have to be." She looked at me, confused. "So, roofs are black or gray, Jack. That's how roofs work." "Not anymore," I said, a slow, dangerous grin spreading across my face. "I work in construction supply, remember? Technology has changed. You can get shingles in harbor blue. You can get them in barn red. You can get custom-coated acrylic shingles in literally any Pantone shade if you pay for the glazing." Sarah stared at me. She looked at the roof. Then she looked back at me. Her eyes widened. "No," she said. "Jack, absolutely not." "They made me take down a 3x5 flag," I said, my voice trembling with the sheer magnitude of the idea. "They said it was a distraction. They said it was temporary." I stood up and walked to the edge of the patio, looking up at the vast expanse of the roof. It was a hip roof design. The front slope facing the street was huge. It was a canvas, a 2,000 square foot canvas. A roof isn't temporary, Sarah. A roof is a permanent structural component, and if I use asphalt shingles, I am fully compliant with Bylaw 88.1. "You want to change the roof color?" "I don't want to change the color," I corrected her. "I want to create a masterpiece." "Jack, the vacation money." "Sarah, listen to me. This isn't just about the flag anymore. This is about the soul of this neighborhood. It's about Brenda thinking she owns our eyeballs. Imagine her face. Just imagine it. Imagine her standing there with her little laser tape measure, realizing she can't do a damn thing because she forgot to update the roofing clause." Sarah was silent. I saw the conflict in her eyes. She hated the HOA too. Everyone did. But she was the practical one. "How much?" she asked. "For a standard roof? Probably 10 grand. For what I want to do, maybe 15. That's the Cabo Fund. That's the Cabo Fund and the Emergency Fund." "We can go to Cabo next year," I pleaded. "But the look on Brenda's face? That's a memory that will last a lifetime. That is a legacy we leave to our children." "We don't have children. We will, and they will grow up in the Freedom House." Sarah looked at the roof. She took a sip of my beer. A small, mischievous smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "If you do this," she said slowly, "it has to be perfect. You can't just paint some shingles red. It has to look professional. I know a guy, I said, thinking of Rusty. I know a guy who is crazy enough to do it. $15,000 it's she, whispered, shaking her head. I can't believe I'm considering this. It's not spending money, Sarah, I said, putting my arm around her. It's investing in justice. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I had a project to manage. I didn't call the big roofing companies. I knew they wouldn't touch this. They relied on HOA referrals. They wouldn't risk their reputation pissing off the board. I needed someone independent, someone hungry, someone who hated authority as much as I did. I found Rusty on Craigslist. The ad was simple. Roofing, siding, gutters. I fix leaks others can't. Cash discounts. Call Rusty. I called him at 9:00 a.m. He answered on the second ring. Yeah, this is Rusty. Rusty, my name is Jack. I have a roofing job in Whispering Pines. Need a full replacement. Whispering Pines? He groaned. I could hear a lighter flicking in the background. Look, buddy, I charge a 20% pain-in-the-ass surcharge for that neighborhood. The HOA, there watches me like a hawk. Last time I was there, some lady measured my ladder placement to make sure it was OSHA compliant. That was Brenda, I said. Yeah, Brenda. That's the one. Look, unless you're paying cash, I ain't dealing with her. I am paying cash, I said. And Rusty? I don't just want a roof. I want to piss her off. I want to do something that follows the letter of the law but violates the spirit of it so hard it creates a sonic boom. There was a silence on the other end. Then a slow, gravelly chuckle. I'm listening. I want you to shingle my roof in a pattern, I said. I want the American flag, stars, stripes, the whole deal, covering the entire street-facing slope. Rusty went silent again. You serious? Dead serious. I checked the bylaws. No color restrictions on asphalt. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Rusty said. I'll bring the color swatches. 20 minutes later, a vehicle turned onto Oak Street that didn't belong in Whispering Pines. The cars were as regulated as the mailboxes. You had your silver Lexus SUVs, your white Teslas, and the occasional daring slate-gray BMW. They were clean, quiet, and leased. Rusty's truck was none of those things. It was a Ford F-350 that had started life white, but was now a patchwork quilt of Bondo, primer, and rust. It had a ladder rack that rattled like a skeleton in a dryer. The exhaust pipe was the size of a coffee can and emitted a low, guttural rumble that set off the motion alarm on Mrs. Gable's Mercedes as it passed. On the back bumper, a sticker read, "My boss is a Jewish carpenter." Another one next to it read, "I break for tacos and nothing else." He pulled into my driveway, the diesel engine idling with the subtlety of a tank. I saw the curtain in Brenda's front window twitch. She was watching. She was probably already filling out a commercial vehicle overnight parking violation form, even though he'd only been there for 10 seconds. I walked out to meet him. Rusty stepped out of the cab. He was a mountain of a man, easily 6'4", wearing work boots that had seen more tragedy than a Shakespeare play. He had a beard that looked like steel wool and skin that was tanned to the color of cured leather. He hitched up a tool belt that looked heavy enough to anchor a boat. He looked at me, then at the house, then at Brenda's window across the street. He didn't wave. He just spat a sunflower seed shell onto my driveway with sniper-like precision. "You Jack?" he rumbled. "I'm Jack." "I'm Rusty." He shook my hand. His grip felt like a hydraulic press. "Nice neighborhood. Smells like oppression." "You have no idea," I said. Come on inside, we have to talk strategy. I led him into the kitchen. Sarah was there, pretending to read a magazine, but I could tell she was sizing him up. Rusty took off his stained baseball cap out of respect, revealing a bald head that shone under the recessed lighting. Ma'am, he nodded to Sarah. Rusty, she replied, keeping a neutral face. Do you want some coffee? No thanks, ma'am. Caffeine makes me jittery. I stick to nicotine and rage. He pulled a crumpled pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, looked at it, realized he was indoors, and put it back. We sat at the island. I pulled up the bylaws on my laptop and turned the screen toward him. All right, I said. Here's the situation. The HOA president, that lovely lady across the street, fined me for a flag. She's a tyrant. She uses a laser measure to check grass height. Rusty nodded solemnly. I know the type. I did a job in Shady Acres last year. Got cited because my crew was listening to classic rock at a provocative volume. It was the Eagles, man. Take it easy. How is that provocative? Exactly, I said. So I found this loophole. I pointed to section 8.1. It specifies material, asphalt. It specifies condition, good repair. It says nothing about color. Rusty leaned in, putting a pair of reading glasses on the end of his nose that looked comically small on his face. He read slowly, his lips moving slightly. He read the section, then the addendums. He scrolled up, then down. He sat back and let out a low whistle. Well, I'll be damned, he said. They missed it. They missed it, I agreed. Usually, Rusty said, tapping the table with a finger the size of a sausage. They have a catch-all clause. Harmony of design or some crap like that. But here, they put all their eggs in the siding basket. They got so obsessed with the beige walls they forgot people can see the roof. So, can we do it? I asked, leaning forward. Can we put a flag on the roof? Rusty rubbed his chin. Technically, yes. But you can't just buy red and blue shingles at Home Depot. They don't stock them. Nobody puts a red roof on a house unless it's a Pizza Hut or a barn. So we're stuck? No, Rusty grinned, and the gold tooth flashed again. We ain't stuck. I know a supplier in Maryland. They do custom architectural shingles for commercial branding, logos on factory roofs, that kind of thing. They take a high-grade asphalt shingle, impact-resistant, Class 4 hail rating, top-tier stuff, and they infuse the ceramic granules with a polymetric dye. It's permanent, it's UV-resistant, and it's bright. How bright? Sarah asked from the other side of the island. Rusty turned to her. Ma'am, we're talking visible from low Earth orbit bright. The red is red, the blue is midnight, and the white? It's not that creamy off-white you see on siding. It's titanium white. Sarah covered her mouth. I couldn't tell if she was horrified or trying not to laugh. Here's the kicker, Rusty continued, turning back to me. To do this right, to make it look like a flag and not just a mess, we gotta map it. I gotta grid the roof. The stars? I can't just slap them on. I gotta cut the white shingles into star shapes and inlay them into the blue. Field, using a flashing technique so it doesn't leak. It's intricate work. It's like doing a mosaic. And the cost? I asked, bracing myself. Rusty pulled a notepad out of his back pocket and scribbled some numbers. He did some multiplication, scratched his head, and added a 0. Materials are gonna run you $6,000. Custom order, rush delivery. I swallowed. Labor, he continued. This ain't a one-day tear-off. This is art. My guys are gonna have to cut every shingle by hand for the stripes to line up with the roof valleys. Plus, I gotta pay 'em hazard pay because Brenda is gonna be screaming at them the whole time. Call it $8,000 for labor. 14,000, I said. Plus disposal fees for the old roof, and permits. Let's call it 15 flat. $15,000. The room went silent. The refrigerator hummed. I looked at Sarah. This was the moment. This was the cliff. We could back away. We could pay the $50 fine, take our trip to Cabo, and live in beige submission for the rest of our lives. We could grow old and bitter, complaining about Brenda over whispered dinners. Sarah looked at the citation still sitting on the counter. She picked it up. She looked at the line that said, "Unauthorized aesthetic disruption." She looked at Rusty. "Will it leak?" "Ma'am, I've been roofing for 30 years. I could roof a house with playing cards and duct tape and it wouldn't leak. With these materials, this roof will outlast the apocalypse. It'll be the only thing standing when the nukes hit. Just a glowing American flag in the wasteland." Sarah looked at me. Her eyes were hard, but there was a spark in them I hadn't seen since college. "Do it," she said. My heart soared. "But," she added, pointing a finger at Rusty, "if you get any paint on my hydrangeas, I will end you." Rusty saluted. "Understood, ma'am." The logistics of turning a suburban home into a patriotic monument were complex. First, we needed the permit. Rusty handled this. He went down to the county clerk's office. He applied for a roof replacement, asphalt shingle. He didn't specify the color because the form didn't ask for it. The clerk stamped it without looking up. Next, the materials. Rusty placed the order with his Maryland contact. "Code name, Project Glory," he told me on the phone. "They said they can have the custom pallets here by Wednesday." "What do we tell the neighbors?" I asked him. "If they see pallets of red shingles sitting in the driveway, Brenda will file an injunction before we can open a pack." "Leave that to me," Rusty said. "We're gonna wrap the pallets in black plastic. If anyone asks, it's specialized thermal insulation material." Wednesday arrived. A flatbed truck rumbled down the street. It dropped 3 massive pallets on my driveway, all wrapped tightly in black shrink wrap. Brenda was there within 4 minutes. I was at work, but my Ring doorbell camera caught the whole interaction. Brenda walked up the driveway, clipboard in hand. She poked one of the pallets with her pen. "What is this?" she demanded of the delivery driver, a guy named Stan, who looked like he'd been awake for 3 days. "Roofing," Stan grunted, signing his paperwork. "This is an unauthorized storage of construction materials," Brenda announced. "They cannot remain on the driveway for more than 48 hours. "Take it up with the owner, lady," Stan said, climbing back into his truck. "I just drive the forklift." When I got home, there was a note on the door. "Violation. Unsightly storage. Removal required immediately." I crumbled it up and threw it in the trash. Thursday morning, the invasion began. Rusty's crew consisted of 4 guys. Rusty, a guy named Tiny, who was wider than a refrigerator, a wiry guy named Skeeter, who smoked cigarettes with a frantic intensity, and a younger kid named Jesus, who did all the heavy lifting. They pulled up at 7:00 a.m. They didn't just bring ladders, they brought scaffolding. "Why the scaffolding?" I asked, walking out with coffee for the crew. "Steep pitch," Rusty lied. "Plus, we need privacy." He winked. They set up the scaffolding along the front of the house. Then they did something brilliant. They took massive blue tarps, the cheap, crinkly kind, and draped them over the scaffolding, effectively creating a curtain around the entire front of the roof. You couldn't see what they were doing. You could only hear the thud-thud rip of the old shingles coming off. Brenda came out at 7:15 a.m. She stood on the sidewalk, hands on her hips. She looked like a general surveying a battlefield she couldn't control. "What is the meaning of this?" she yelled up at the tarp. Rusty poked his head out through a slit in the blue plastic. He was wearing a dust mask pulled down around his neck. "Morning, ma'am," he bellowed. His voice boomed through the neighborhood. "You are violating the visual harmony," she shouted. "Those tarps are blue! Bright blue! We only allow earth tone protective coverings." "Safety regulation," Rusty shouted back. "OSHA requirement 1926.5. Must use high visibility containment for, potential particulate matter." Particulate matter? Brenda took a step back. "Is it asbestos?" "Could be," Rusty lied effortlessly. "House this age, you never know. We found some weird mold under the flashing. Very aggressive, black mold. Maybe toxic. You probably want to keep your windows closed, ma'am. The spores travel on the wind." Brenda turned pale. The idea of dirt or mold was her kryptonite. She clamped a hand over her mouth. I want to see the permit," she muffled through her hand. "It's taped to the front door." Rusty pointed down. She scurried up the driveway, holding her breath. She inspected the permit taped to the glass. County permit number 88492. Roof replacement. It was valid. She couldn't stop it. She retreated to her house, looking back at the blue monstrosity with pure hatred. "Nice work," I whispered to Rusty as he climbed down for a water break. "She's an amateur," Rusty scoffed. "I once had a HOA president try to drone strike my crew with a DJI Phantom. I took it down with a nail gun. This lady is soft." For the next 2 days, the work continued in secrecy. The cone of silence, as Rusty called the tarp setup, worked perfectly. Inside the tent, it was a hive of activity. I climbed up there on Friday evening to check the progress. The heat under the tarp was intense, smelling of asphalt and adhesive. "Watch your step," Rusty warned. I looked down at the roof. My jaw hit the plywood. It was half done, and it was overwhelming. The blue field was already laid on the left side. It was a deep, rich navy, almost pearlescent. The white stars weren't just painted on. Rusty had hand-cut white shingles into star shapes and integrated them into the shingle course. They were crisp, sharp. The stripes were starting to take form. The red was vivid, like a fire engine mixed with a Corvette. The white stripes were bright and clean. I was speechless. "It's so bright." "Wait till we seal it," Tiny grunted from where he was nailing a ridge cap. "We got a clear coat UV glaze. It's gonna shine like a diamond." "We're on schedule to finish tomorrow by noon," Rusty said. "We drop the tarps on Saturday morning. You ready for the fireworks?" "I don't think I am," I admitted, "but I can't wait." "One problem," Skeeter said, looking up from his cigarette. "We're running low on the Liberty Red. We got enough for the main slope, but the dormer over the garage, it's gonna be tight." "Don't tell me that," I said. "We can't have a half flag." "I can stretch it," Rusty said. "We'll use the cutoffs. It'll be close, but we'll make it work. Just pray for no rain tonight." It didn't rain. Saturday morning arrived with a stillness that felt heavy. The neighborhood was quiet. People were sleeping in, enjoying the weekend. Rusty's crew showed up at 6:30 a.m. for the final touches. They were quiet today. No music, no yelling. They knew it was showtime. I sat on the front porch steps, coffee in hand. Sarah came out and sat next to me. "You nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," I said. "We just spent 15 grand to troll a grandmother." "She's not a grandmother," Sarah corrected. "She's a monster, and she deserves it." "Are the cameras ready?" "I have the GoPro set up in the window," Sarah said. "And I have my phone." At 7:55 a.m., the door across the street opened. Brenda stepped out. She was wearing a tracksuit today, a beige tracksuit. She began her morning patrol, scanning the street for unauthorized dew. She looked at my house. The blue tarps were still up, billowing slightly in the morning breeze. "You!" she yelled from the curb. "When is that eyesore coming down? The permit expires on Sunday." I stood up. "Right now, Brenda." I signaled to Rusty, who was standing on the ridge of the roof, hidden from view. "Drop it!" Rusty yelled. Tiny and Skeeter slashed the zip ties holding the tarps. Gravity took over. The massive blue sheets slid down the scaffolding, crumpling onto the lawn like the curtain dropping at a theater. The sun, which had just cleared the tree line, hit the roof. It was like someone had turned on a spotlight. The colors exploded. The Liberty Red screamed against the beige sky. The midnight blue absorbed the light and threw back the white stars with blinding contrast. The stripes flowed perfectly across the roofline, dipping into the valleys and rising over the ridges, creating the illusion of a massive flag waving in a gale. It was aggressive. It was loud. It was magnificent. I looked at Brenda. She froze mid-step. Her clipboard slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the sidewalk. She took off her glasses. She rubbed her eyes. She put them back on. She staggered back a step, as if the sheer patriotism of the roof had physically pushed her. "Morning, Brenda," I shouted, raising my mug in a toast. "Happy Independence Day." She made a sound like a strangled cat. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. She pointed a shaking finger at the house, but no words came out. Neighbors started to emerge. Doors opened. Garage doors rumbled up. Mr. Henderson walked out in his bathrobe to pick up his paper. He looked up. He stopped. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned," he shouted. "God bless America." It's... Brenda finally found her voice. It was a high-pitched shriek. "It's an abomination." "It's asphalt," I yelled back. "Bylaw 88.1, no color restrictions." You maniac!" She was hyperventilating now. She fumbled for her phone. "I'm calling the police. This is vandalism. This is hate speech. This is not beige." Rusty climbed down the ladder, wiping his hands on a rag. He stood next to me, lighting a cigarette. "She looks mad," Rusty observed. "She's dialing 911, I said. Rusty checked his watch. "Right on schedule. You got the permit handy?" "Right here." "Good," Rusty exhaled a cloud of smoke. "'Cause I think she's about to try and arrest the house." The siren wailed in the distance. "Here we go," I whispered. The sirens didn't just chirp, they wailed. In a normal neighborhood, 2 police cruisers screaming down the street at 8 a.m. on a Saturday would signal a bank robbery, a hostage situation, or at the very least, a meth lab explosion. In Whispering Pines, it usually meant someone was walking a dog off-leash, or a teenager was skateboarding on the median. But this time, the response was disproportionate. Brenda must have used the keywords that trigger a tactical response. She probably told the dispatcher there was a radicalized standoff or mass destruction of property in progress. The first cruiser, a Dodge Charger with the aggressive black and white livery of the county sheriff, screeched to a halt in front of my driveway, blocking Rusty's truck. The second cruiser boxed in my Honda Civic. Doors flew open. "Stay here," I told Sarah, who was filming from the porch railing with the steady hand of a combat cameraman. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "This is better than Netflix." I walked down the driveway, my hands clearly visible, holding nothing but my coffee mug. Rusty stood by his truck, looking bored, leaning against the fender with his arms crossed over his massive chest. He looked like a bouncer guarding the VIP section of a very strange club. Officer Miller stepped out of the lead car. I recognized him. He was a veteran of the force, a guy with salt and pepper hair, and the weary posture of a man who had spent 20 years dealing with suburban nonsense. He had his hand resting near his holster, not on it, but near it, as he scanned the scene. His partner, a younger guy, who looked like he was fresh out of the academy and hoping for action, popped out of the passenger side. He looked ready to tackle someone. "Everyone stay where you are," Miller shouted, his voice practicing command presence. "We have a report of malicious destruction and public disorder." Brenda, who had been pacing in circles on the sidewalk like a caged tiger, sprinted toward him. "Officer! Officer!" She was waving her arms frantically. "Thank God you're here! Arrest them! Arrest them all!" Miller held up a hand to stop her advance. "Ma'am, step back. Who is the aggressor?" "Him!" She pointed a trembling finger at me. "And him!" She pointed at Rusty. "They have destroyed the neighborhood. Look at it! Just look at it!" Miller turned his head. He looked at me. I was wearing cargo shorts and a t-shirt that said Grill Sergeant. I took a sip of coffee. He looked at Rusty. Rusty nodded. "Sup?" Then Officer Miller looked past us. He looked up at the house. The reaction was cinematic. Miller stopped walking. His jaw didn't drop. He was too professional for that. But his entire body went rigid. He slowly reached up and removed his sunglasses. He squinted against the glare coming off the high-gloss Liberty Red stripes. He tilted his head to the left, then to the right. "Mother of God," he muttered. It wasn't a prayer. It was a statement of fact. The rookie cop looked up too. "Whoa," he said, breaking character. Is that the roof?" "It's an assault!" Brenda shrieked, inserting herself between Miller and the view. "It is a visual hate crime. It is inciting violence. I want him in handcuffs." Miller shook his head, as if trying to clear a mirage. He walked up the driveway, ignoring Brenda for a moment, and approached me. "Sir, do you live here?" "Yes, officer. My name is Jack." "Jack," Miller sighed, pulling a notepad out of his pocket. Did you do this?" "I had it professionally installed," I corrected, gesturing to Rusty. "Licensed. Contractor. Fully permitted. We just finished the reveal." Miller looked at the roof again. "It's bright, Jack. It's really bright." "It's the American flag, officer. Oh, say, can you see, and all that." "I can see it, all right. I think the International Space Station can see it." Miller turned to Brenda, who was now vibrating with a frequency that could shatter glass. "Ma'am, you called 911. You stated there was catastrophic vandalism and a violent disturbance." "There is!" Brenda yelled. "My property value is being vandalized. My peace of mind is being disturbed. Look at it. It violates every bylaw in the book. It's not earth-toned. It's aggressive." Miller looked at his notepad. "Ma'am, vandalism implies he damaged your property. Did he paint your house?" "No, but did he come onto your land and paint your car?" "No, but the reflection. The glare is hitting my living room window." Miller looked at the sun. He looked at the roof. "Ma'am, that's just physics. The sun reflects off things." "He did it on purpose," she insisted, her voice cracking. "He did it to mock me. He mocked the Architectural Review Committee. This is harassment." Miller turned back to me. His face was stoic, but I saw a flicker of amusement in his eyes. A tiny, dangerous spark. "Sir, is this harassment?" "No, officer," I said calmly. "My roof was due for replacement. The bylaws require asphalt shingles. These are asphalt shingles. I simply chose a patriotic color scheme for the 4th of July weekend. I love my country. Is that a crime?" Miller bit the inside of his cheek. He looked at the rookie. "Is loving your country a crime?" Rook? The rookie grinned. Not in my book, sir. Miller turned back to Brenda. Ma'am, look, it's eccentric. I'll give you that. It's the loudest roof I've ever seen. But I don't see a crime here. He hasn't damaged anyone else's property. He's not playing loud music. He's not threatening you physically. He is threatening the aesthetic integrity of Whispering Pines, Brenda screamed. She was losing it. The facade of the composed HOA president was crumbling, revealing the tyrant beneath. We have rules. We have standards. You cannot just let him get away with this. Write him a ticket. Cite him for something. Public indecency. For a roof? Miller raised an eyebrow. You want me to cite a house for indecency? Is it naked? Is it showing its insulation? A few neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk snickered. Mr. Henderson was openly laughing now, leaning on his mailbox. This is not funny. Brenda spun around to face the crowd. You all think this is funny? Wait until your appraisals come in. Wait until Zillow drops your home value by 10% because you live next to a circus tent. She turned back to Miller, getting up in his face. If you won't do your job, I want your badge number. I will report you to the chief. I will report you to the mayor. I know people. Officer Miller's face hardened. The amusement vanished. He took a half step forward, using his height to loom over her. Ma'am, take a step back. Brenda froze. I am doing my job, Miller said, his voice dropping an octave to that cop voice that makes you want to apologize for things you didn't do. My job is to enforce the penal code, not the HOA handbook. I don't care about your bylaws. I don't care about your earth tones. Unless this man starts shooting fireworks off that chimney at your cat, this is a civil matter. And furthermore, Miller continued, cutting her off, you called 911. You tied up 2 units and a dispatcher for a roof color dispute. That is a misuse of the emergency reporting system. I could cite you right now for filing a false report. Brenda's mouth clamped shut. Her face went from purple to a pale, sickly white. Now, Miller said, putting his sunglasses back on. I suggest you go back inside, cool off, and handle this through your lawyers. Do not call us again unless there is blood or fire. Do I make myself clear? Brenda stared at him. She stared at me. She stared at Rusty, who gave her a little 2-finger salute. You will regret this, she hissed at me. It was a whisper, meant only for my ears. You think the police can save you? The police are nothing. I am the board. She turned and walked back to her house. She didn't march this time. She slunk. It was the walk of a predator that had missed the kill and was retreating to the tall grass to plan a better ambush. Officer Miller watched her go. He waited until her front door slammed shut. He turned to me. He let out a long breath and shook his head. Jack, he said. Officer? That is the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life. Thank you, sir. It's beautiful, the rookie chimed in. Can I take a picture? Make it quick, Miller said, walking back to his cruiser. We got actual work to do. And Jack? Yeah? She's not done, Miller warned, his hand on the door handle. I know her type. I've been to this neighborhood for noise complaints about wind chimes. She's going to paper you to death. You better have a good lawyer. I'm working on it, I said. The rookie snapped a selfie with the house in the background, gave me a thumbs up, and jumped into the passenger seat. The cruisers pulled away. Lights off, rolling slowly down the street. The silence that followed was heavy. The adrenaline crash hit me like a physical blow. My hands started to shake. Rusty walked over and clapped a hand on my shoulder. It felt like being hit by a bear paw. Well, Rusty said, lighting a cigarette. That went better than expected. I thought she was going to bite him. She wanted to, I said. Sarah came down the stairs. She was beaming. I got it all, she said, waving her phone. The look on her face when he threatened to cite her? Priceless. I'm putting this on TikTok immediately. Don't, I said. Not yet. If. We humiliate her publicly right now. She'll go nuclear. She's already nuclear, Jack, Sarah said, pointing to Brenda's house. The blinds were closed, but I could feel the energy radiating from that house. It was the dark, cold energy of bureaucratic vengeance. Neighbors started walking up. It turned into an impromptu block party. Mr. Henderson shook my hand. Jack, you're a legend. I've hated that woman since she measured my hedges in 2018. A mom from down the street, pushing a stroller, looked up at the roof. My son loves it. He thinks Captain America lives here. Does he? I asked, looking up at the stripes. Or does a guy who is about to get sued into oblivion live here? Probably both, she laughed. For an hour, it was great. I was the hero of Whispering Pines. People who usually kept their heads down and their blinds drawn were out on the street, laughing, pointing, and sharing stories of their own run-ins with Brenda. But as the sun got higher and the heat intensified, the crowd thinned out. Rusty and his crew packed up the scaffolding. Checks in the mail? Rusty asked, loading the last ladder onto his truck. I'll wire it today, I said. Worth every penny. Hey. Rusty leaned out the window of his truck. Seriously, watch your back. I've seen people like her destroy lives over less. She's gonna look for a technicality. She's gonna look for a way to foreclose. Keep your nose clean. I will. And if you need anything else painted, maybe the driveway, a nice bald eagle. Let's stick with the roof for now, I laughed. Rusty drove off, his truck rattling and smoking, leaving a trail of diesel fumes and rebellion. I stood in the driveway with Sarah. The silence of the suburbs returned. But it wasn't the same. The beige uniformity had been shattered. A massive, screaming symbol of defiance sat on top of my house. What now? Sarah asked. Now we wait, I said. She has to call a board meeting to find me. She has to follow procedure. You think she cares about procedure? She lives for procedure. It's her weapon. She'll try to use the book to kill me. I didn't know how right I was. That afternoon, the neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. I went inside to cool off. I turned on the TV, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking out the window. At 4:00 p.m., a white sedan pulled up. It wasn't a police car. It wasn't a neighbor. It was a courier service. Priority legal delivery. The driver walked up the path. He didn't look at the roof. He was just doing a job. He rang the bell. I opened the door. Delivery for Jack. He checked the package. Jack Miller? That's me. Sign here. I signed. He handed me a thick, heavy envelope. It felt like a brick. I closed the door and leaned against it. What is it? Sarah asked from the kitchen. I ripped it open. It wasn't just a letter. It was a dossier. The cover letter was on heavy, expensive bond paper. The letterhead read, Law. Offices of Stodge, Grinch, and Payne, representing Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. My hands trembled as I read the first paragraph. Notice of catastrophic violation and intent to cure. Dear Mr. Miller, regarding the unauthorized and offensive structural modification at 124 Oak Street, I skipped the legalese and went to the bold text. The board has convened an emergency executive session via teleconference at 12:00 p.m. today. They had met while I was high-fiving the neighbors. The board has determined that the roofing material, while technically asphalt, constitutes a public nuisance and an architecture incompatible with the community standard as defined in Section 104. B. The catch-all clause. I cursed. Rusty was right. There was always a catch-all clause. Furthermore, the board has voted to assess fines on a per-unit basis for the violation. As the roof consists of approximately 4,000 individual shingles, and each shingle is individually colored in violation of the Harmony Code, the board is assessing a fine of $0 per shingle per day. I did the math in my head. 4,000 shingles, 10 cents each. $400. Plus a daily administrative fee of $200 for managing the disturbance. $600 a day. $4,200 a week. $18,000 a month. And then the kicker at the bottom. If the violation is not remedied, roof replaced with approved neutral color, within 14 days, the association will exercise its right under state law to place a lien on the property and initiate non-judicial foreclosure proceedings to recover the unpaid assessments. They weren't just fining me, they were starting the clock on taking my house. I looked at Sarah. The blood had drained from my face. "What is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "They found a way," I whispered. "They're charging me per shingle." "Per shingle?" She grabbed the letter. She read it. She gasped. "Jack, they can't do this." They just did. I looked out the window. Brenda was standing in her front yard again. She wasn't holding a clipboard this time. She was holding a glass of white wine. She looked at my house. Then she looked directly at my window. She raised her glass. A toast. "Checkmate," the toast said. I looked at the fine. I looked at the roof. The patriotic high was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of contract law. "We need a lawyer," I said. "A real one, not the guy who did our closing." "We can't afford a real lawyer, Jack. We just spent our savings on the roof." "We don't have a choice," I said. "If we don't fight this, we're homeless in 6 months." I went to the fridge and grabbed a beer. I needed to think. I needed a strategy. Brenda had the bylaws. She had the lawyers. She had the time. But I had something she didn't have. I had a roof that was so ridiculous, so over the top, that it couldn't just be a local story. "Sarah," I said, a new idea forming in the back of my panic-stricken brain. "Rusty mentioned something. He said I need a crusader." "A what?" "A crusader. Someone who hates HOAs more than they love money." I pulled out my laptop. I sat at the kitchen table. I typed into the search bar, ACLU versus HOA flag dispute. The results populated. Lots of small cases. But one name kept popping up in the headlines. Simon Vance. The lawyer who made an HOA cry. ACLU Pitbull wins landmark case against gated community. I clicked on his profile. He looked like a shark in a suit. His bio said he specialized in First Amendment anomalies and property rights overreach. I looked at the clock. It was 5:00 p.m. on a Saturday. No lawyer would answer. But Simon Vance didn't look like a guy who played golf on weekends. He looked like a guy who hunted. I found his email address. Subject: a 2,000 cents SKU FT American flag. Roof versus the beige tyranny. I started typing. I poured it all out. The measuring tape, the fine, the loophole, the police, the per shingle fine. I attached the picture the rookie cop had taken, which Sarah had airdropped to me. the roof glowing in the sun. I hit send. I stared at the screen. "Jack," Sarah said softly, "do you really think the ACLU is going to care about our roof?" "I don't know," I said. "But if they don't, we better learn to like apartment living." Sunday was the longest day of my life. In Whispering Pines, Sundays were usually reserved for washing cars and avoiding eye contact with neighbors. But this Sunday, the air was thick with tension. Every time I looked out the window, I saw someone walking slowly past my house, phone out, snapping pictures. The Freedom House, as the neighborhood kids were calling it, had become a tourist attraction. But inside, the mood was funereal. Sarah was at the kitchen table with a calculator and a spreadsheet. "If we liquidate the 401k," she muttered, "we can pay the fines for 3 months. Maybe 4. "We aren't paying them," I said, pacing the living room. "If we pay a cent, we admit guilt. Jack, they're charging us $600 a day. By Tuesday, we'll owe them more than the car is worth." I checked my email for the 100th time. Nothing. No reply from Simon Vance. No reply from the 3 other local lawyers I had panic emailed at 2:00 a.m. I felt the weight of my hubris crushing me. I had wanted to be a hero. I had wanted to stick it to the man. Instead, I had painted a target on my back the size of a roof. Brenda was enjoying it. I saw her around noon, standing at the end of her driveway with Gary, the HOA treasurer. She was pointing at my roof, then pointing at her clipboard. They were laughing. It was a cold, bureaucratic laugh. Monday morning arrived. I called in sick to work again. I couldn't focus on construction supply logistics when my own house was under siege. At 9:00 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Washington, D.C. area code. My heart hammered against my ribs. I swiped accept. "Hello? Is this Jack Miller, the owner of the distinctive property in Virginia?" The voice was fast, sharp, and sounded like it was being projected through a megaphone, even though he was speaking normally. It had the cadence of a man who billed by the second. "Yes, this is Jack. This is Simon Vance, ACLU, Federal Division." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Simon, thank God. Did you get my email?" "I did. I'm looking at the photo of your roof right now. It is currently projected on the 60-inch screen in our conference room." "I know it's a lot," I stammered. "It's hideous," Simon said flatly. "Aesthetically, it is a crime against architecture. It looks like a bald eagle vomited on a suburban ranch." My heart sank. "So, you can't help?" "Help?" Simon let out a bark of laughter. "Jack, are you kidding? It's the most beautiful constitutional argument I have ever seen. I've been waiting 10 years for a case like this. You have? Listen to me closely, Jack. HOAs operate on fear. They operate on the assumption that you are too poor to sue and too tired to fight. They weaponize the cost of litigation. But you gave me something special. You gave me the per shingle fine." "Is that bad?" "It's fatal," Simon said, and I could practically hear him grinning. "It's what we in the legal profession call arbitrary and capricious enforcement. By fining you per shingle, they have acknowledged that the roof is composed of individual units, not a single structure. But they have failed to identify which shingles are non-compliant. Are the red ones non-compliant? The white ones? The blue ones? They can't ban all 3 colors, or they'd be banning the flag itself. So we have a case? We don't just have a case, Jack. We have a nuclear weapon. I looked up your HOA's bylaws. I accessed Their public portal. Their catch-all clause is vague. In 2021, the Supreme Court of Virginia ruled that ambiguous covenants must be construed in favor of the free use of land. They are standing on quicksand, and Brenda just handed you a shovel to bury them. They're threatening foreclosure, I said, my voice shaking. They gave me 14 days. They're bluffing. They can't foreclose on a disputed fine until the dispute is settled. But they want you to panic. They want you to fold. So what do we do? When is the next board meeting? Tonight, I said. 7:00 p.m. It's an emergency ratification hearing to formalize the lien. Perfect, Simon said. I love a deadline. It focuses the mind. Are you coming down? I can't. I'm in D.C. prepping for a Supreme Court brief on Wednesday. But I don't need to be there physically to ruin Brenda's night. Do you have a good speakerphone? I have a Bluetooth conference speaker I use for work. Charge it. Bring it. Do not say a word. Do not engage with Brenda. Do not let her bait you. When she asks for your statement, you put the speaker on the table and you dial this number. I'll handle the rest. Okay, I said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Simon, how much is this going to cost me? Pro bono, Simon said instantly. The ACLU takes cases that set precedents. And Jack, I really hate HOAs. Consider this my personal hobby. The hours between the call and the meeting were a blur of nervous energy. Sarah ironed my shirt. You have to look professional, she said. Don't look like the guy who painted a flag on his roof. Look like the guy who owns the bank. I put on my best suit. I polished my shoes. I charged the Jabra speakerphone until the battery light was solid green. At 6:45 p.m., we walked to the community center. It was a short walk, but it felt like a march to the gallows. The parking lot was full. Word had gotten out. The emergency hearing was the hottest ticket in town. We walked into the multi-purpose room. It smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Folding chairs were set up in rows. They were packed. Neighbors I knew nodded at me. Some gave me thumbs up. Others, the ones who were friends with Brenda, glared. At the front of the room, on a raised dais, sat the board. There was Gary, the treasurer, looking nervous. There was Linda, the secretary, scribbling furiously. And in the center, on a chair slightly higher than the others, was Brenda. She looked triumphant. She was wearing a blazer that was so beige it almost vibrated. She had her gavel, a real wooden one this time, positioned perfectly in front of her. Please take your seats, she commanded into the microphone. This emergency session of the Whispering Pines HOA board is now in session. The room quieted down. We are here, Brenda began, her voice dripping with solemnity, to address a grave violation of our community standards. A violation that threatens the property values of every single homeowner in this room. She gestured to a projector screen behind her. A picture of my house appeared. A gasp went through the room. It did look shocking on the big screen. Mr. Jack Miller, Brenda said, pointing a finger at me, has chosen to deface his property. He has chosen to mock our rules. He has chosen anarchy. She picked up a piece of paper. The board has calculated the fines. As of today, the outstanding balance is $1,800. If the roof is not replaced by the end of the week, we will proceed with a lien. If the lien is not satisfied, we will foreclose. She looked at me. Mr. Miller, do you have anything to say before we vote to ruin your credit score? I stood up. My legs felt like jelly, but I kept my face stone cold. I walked to the front of the room. I carried the small, black speakerphone like it was a grenade. I placed it gently on the table in front of Brenda. "Mr. Miller?" Brenda sneered. "Is this a toy? Are you going to play music for us?" "I yield my time," I said clearly, my voice echoing in the silent room, "to my legal counsel." "You don't have counsel," Brenda scoffed. "We checked. You haven't retained anyone in the county." "He's not in the county," I said. I pressed the button. The speaker beeped. It connected. "Hello?" Brenda leaned into the device. "Who is this?" The voice that filled the room was not the voice of a friend. It was the voice of God's angry lawyer. "Good evening, Brenda. My name is Simon Vance. I am the senior litigator for the American Civil Liberties Union, Federal Division. Are you recording this meeting?" The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear Gary swallow. Brenda blinked. The ACLU? "Yes. The organization that defends the Bill of Rights. Perhaps you've heard of it? Or do you only read the bylaws?" Brenda bristled. "This is a private corporation meeting. You have no standing here." "I have standing when a quasi-governmental entity, that's you, Brenda, attempts to violate the federally protected rights of a citizen under the guise of contract law. Now, before you bang that gavel, I need you to listen very, very closely, because the next 5 minutes will determine whether you go home to your house tonight, or whether you go home to a house that is about to be owned by Jack Miller." "Excuse me?" Brenda squeaked. "I am currently holding a draft of a federal lawsuit," Simon continued. His voice was smooth, calm, and terrifying. "It names the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association as a defendant, but it also names you, Brenda Mindless middle name Johnson, personally." You can't sue me personally," Brenda stammered. "I have indemnity as a board member. The D&O insurance covers me." "Ah, a common misconception," Simon purred. "Directors and officers' insurance covers mistakes. It covers negligence. It does not cover acts of malice. It does not cover willful violation of federal law. And let me be clear, fining a man per shingle because you dislike his patriotism, that is malice. That is harassment. The insurance company will drop you faster than a hot rock. You will be defending yourself with your own savings." Gary, the treasurer, turned pale. He leaned away from Brenda. "Now," Simon said, "let's talk about the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. You seem to think it only applies to cloth flags on poles. You are wrong. Case law suggests that display is interpreted broadly. Jack's roof is a display. It is compliant with your material bylaws. It is compliant with your safety codes. The only reason you are fining him is because you don't like the color. That is content-based discrimination, and in this country, we don't allow that." "It's hideous," Brenda yelled, losing her composure. "It destroys the visual harmony." "Show me the definition of visual harmony in the roofing section," Simon snapped. "I have your bylaws right here. Section 8.1. It's missing. You know it's missing. You are enforcing a rule that doesn't exist." Brenda looked at Gary. "Gary, say something." Gary looked at the speakerphone. I think he has a point, Brenda." "Traitor," Brenda hissed. "Here is the offer," Simon said. "And this is a one-time offer. It expires in 3 minutes." The room leaned in. "Option A, you vote to foreclose. I file the suit tomorrow morning at the Federal District Court in Richmond. I will subpoena your emails. I will subpoena your text messages. I'm particularly interested to see what you said about Jack to your neighbors. I will bring the Washington Post. I will bring CNN. I will turn Whispering Pines into the most famous and most hated neighborhood in America. We will seek punitive damages. We will seek emotional distress damages. And when we win, and we will win, we will own the HOA's reserves, and likely your personal assets. Brenda was shaking. She looked at the audience. They weren't smiling anymore. They looked terrified that their HOA dues were about to go towards fighting the ACLU. Option B, Simon continued. You drop the fines, all of them. You issue a formal letter of apology to Jack. You acknowledge that the roof is compliant under the current bylaws. And what? Brenda whispered. And you resign, immediately. Effective tonight. I will not! Brenda slammed her hand on the table. I built this community. I am the only thing keeping it from chaos. Then I'll see you in court, Simon said. Jack, pick up the phone. We're done here. I reached for the phone. Wait! Gary yelled. He stood up. Wait! We can't afford a lawsuit. Sit down, Gary, Brenda commanded. No, Gary shouted back. He looked at the audience. Raise your hand if you want to pay a $5,000 special assessment to pay for Brenda's lawyer. Not a single hand went up. I move to dismiss the fines, Gary shouted. Linda, the secretary, looked at Brenda, then at the crowd. Seconded! You can't do this, Brenda screamed. I am the president. All in favor? Gary asked the board. Aye, said Gary. Aye, said Linda. Motion carries, Gary said, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked at the speakerphone. Mr. Vance, the fines are dismissed. We withdraw the lien threat. Excellent, Simon said. And the resignation? Gary looked at Brenda. Brenda, you heard the man. If you stay, he sues. If he sues, the insurance walks. We can't risk it. Brenda looked around the room. She looked at the neighbors she had bullied for years. She saw no sympathy. She saw only relief that her reign might be over. She stood up slowly. She picked up her gavel. For a second, I thought she was going to throw it at me. Instead, she dropped it on the table. It made a hollow thud. You people, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. You people deserve this. You deserve the tacky roofs. You deserve the chaos. When this neighborhood turns into a carnival, don't come crying to me. She grabbed her purse, walked out the side door. The door slammed shut behind her. The silence held for 1 second. Then someone in the back, I think it was Mr. Henderson, started clapping. Then someone else. Then the whole room erupted. I looked at the speakerphone. Jack? Simon's voice cut through the applause. Yeah, Simon. Tell them to send the apology letter by Friday. And Jack, don't ever paint your driveway. I can't defend a bald eagle driveway. Understood, I laughed. Thanks, Simon. My pleasure. Keep the flag flying. The call ended. I stood there, in the center of the cheering room, feeling a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't realized was crushing me. Sarah ran up and hugged me. We did it, she whispered into my ear. We actually did it. We didn't do it, I said, looking at the speakerphone. The Constitution did it. And a guy named Simon. Section 5. Victory and Aftermath. The walk home that night was different. The streetlights seemed brighter. The air seemed fresher. Even the beige houses didn't look so bad, now that the tyrant was gone. Gary resigned as treasurer 2 weeks later, saying the stress was too much. A new board was elected. They were younger, more relaxed. They repealed the earth tone mandate and replaced it with a common sense guideline. Brenda put her house on the market a month later. She couldn't stand looking out her window every morning and seeing her defeat shining back at her. She moved to a gated community in Florida, one with even stricter rules. I heard she's already on the board there, measuring palm trees. As for the roof, it stayed. Rusty's guarantee held up. The colors didn't fade. If anything, they got brighter. We became a local landmark. Pilots from the nearby regional airport started using my house as a visual waypoint. "Turn left at the Glory House," they'd say. Google Maps updated their satellite imagery about 6 months later. I remember the day I found it. I was at work, bored, zooming in on my neighborhood. And there it was. Amongst a sea of gray and brown rectangles, there was one vibrant, defiant rectangle of red, white, and blue. I printed it out and framed it. I sent a copy to Simon Vance. He sent me back a letter on ACLU stationery that just said, "Still hideous. Good work." I walked out to the porch on the 4th of July the following year. I had a beer in my hand. Sarah was inside making potato salad. I looked up at the roof. The stars were crisp. The stripes were bold. I didn't need a flagpole. I was living under the flag. "Jack," Sarah called out. "Mr. Henderson is here. He wants to know if you can give him Rusty's number. He wants to paint his garage door to look like the Constitution." I laughed. "Tell him to call me." I took a sip of beer and saluted the roof. "God bless America," I whispered. "And God bless the loophole."